Welcome to Blue Iron's Patent Myths podcast. In this podcast, we're going to look at a bunch of, quote, conventional wisdom that's propagated around the startup community regarding intellectual property. Our perspective is different. We finance patent portfolios for startup companies. We make $50 to $100K investment and to build out patent portfolios for startups. We also do loans against patents, $2 to $5 million loans, so we can actually finance a Series A or Series B purely based on the strength of your IP. Our perspective is as somebody who builds value in intellectual property, not just collects plaques on the wall. A big question that comes up quite often is, what's my patent worth? And this notion of patent valuation is one of the most nebulous, ephemeral things that really can't be nailed down. So we're going to talk about the myth of patent valuation. Patent valuation is a myth. And I kind of say that because putting a valuation number on a patent is so difficult. It's so difficult because so many things are unknown and so many things are unmeasurable that it's guessing. It's really guessing. I took a course to become a certified patent valuation analyst, and they presented at least 24 different ways to come up with a valuation number. And, in a lot of ways, it's a lot like putting a valuation number on a startup company. Pre-revenue startup company without, inventory or anything measurable, is it worth $3 million or $10 million or whatever? Who knows? It's really kind of pick a number that feels right, or, compare it to this other company where, that was a $3 million valuation and you look a little bit better. So let's do 4 for you or whatever. I mean, it's very, very nebulous and very, it can be very comparative. Well, that one sold for this amount of money in this situation, and we're similar in certain ways, so our valuation might be similar, and adjust it up or down based on whatever. It's those kind of valuations, the comparison comp kind of valuations are, somewhat reasonable, although every patent has some weirdness to it. Weirdness in that, they're very, very specific on what technology is claimed in there. And, what a patent that might have been licensed into the automotive industry for $1 million may not compare to another patent with a different type of claims that may or may not be comparable, but licensed into that same technology, that same industry. I mean, it's really, really difficult to do. Okay. And a lot of times, valuation is done based on what's my licensing potential. If I licensed it, if I had a feature that was on every cell phone, what's my licensing revenue if, when it got into that cell phone? And if it's a component, piece of silicone that is on the board and it costs $3, well, I can actually measure that. If it's a feature that's inside the phone, a software feature, did people buy it for that feature or not? Who knows? What's the contribution of that invention to the cell phone? Certainly, they did not go out and spend $1,200 on a brand new phone just because I had this cute little way of scrolling, messages or something like that. Figuring all this stuff out is so hard that it's virtually pointless. The only tangible way to do it is if we know we have infringers. If we know we have infringers, then we can start looking at what's the cost of a lawsuit and what could we probably win if we lit up that lawsuit. What would our income be? And in general, when you get to that stage, patent royalties used to go by this 25% rule. And that's kind of common practice, although there's one lawsuit that kind of shot down 25% rule. But it's a patent that it largely covers the product that we're selling, or that the infringer is selling. The patent royalty should be 25% of the profit that the infringer was making on that sale. Now that's if, my case, when I was doing my little sawhorse bracket, if somebody infringed and was selling a sawhorse bracket, I could sue them and collect 25% of the profit that they were making on the sale of that sawhorse bracket. If it's some nebulous component of a cell phone, how do I tell? I have no idea to tell if somebody was buying that cell phone because of that feature or not. Maybe they didn't even know that feature existed. Maybe they never even touched that feature, never turned it on, never saw it, never actuated. Does it add value to the cell phone? Arguably, no. And one side will argue, no, it has absolutely no effect, and only 2% of the people actually touched it, and they touched it for 2 minutes and it basically had no value. So we should pay you nothing. And the other side was saying, well, it's a really big part of the cell phone, and we sold 100 million cell phones. So we should be, entitled to this other, huge money. All this stuff is so fraught with uncertainty. If I looked at a company that had a patent and on their products it said patent pending, could I even tell that a competitor looked at that product and said, you know what, patent pending, do I even want to deal with it at this point? I'd rather just kind of walk away and do something else. How do I even know that occurred? How do I put a value on that? Just the fact that somebody elected not to compete with me because I had the words patent pending. I'll never know that happened. And I'll never be able to measure what's that value. They could have come in and crushed us, but we'll never know. That never happened. And it's hard to put value on an event that never happened and is immeasurable. I like to think about patents as call options. A call option is something that you purchase, you spend money with the hope, with the bet that a stock option or a stock is going to go up. And when we buy a call option, when we buy a patent as a call option, I look at it as an out of the money call option. Patents by definition are out of the money because we have no infringement yet. In fact, usually the company who invented the thing hasn't really got much market traction, hasn't put a product in market. So we write a patent, and by definition, it's out of the money because nobody's infringing at all. Not even the company that owns the patent or the company that licenses the patent. They're not yet infringing. And when I finance a patent, I look at it as an out of the money call option. And the way I look at the startup is that the startup is the mechanism by which we move from out of the money to in the money. I need the startup to build a product that showcases the invention. I need them to educate the marketplace about the pain point and about their solution. And I need them to price it appropriately and otherwise convince a customer to purchase our product. And when the customer purchases our product, they see value in the product, and all of a sudden now we have revenue. If we were able to generate more and more revenue and become profitable, now we're going to attract infringers. We're going to attract competitors who say, hey, that's a cool product. That's a cool feature. I'm going to do that too. Now, finally, we have an in-the-money call option. Now I can value that patent as, okay, if I extracted a license from all these people, this is my revenue stream. Or if I kept them out of my playground by making them cease and desist, here's the increased market share that my company is going to have based on that, So now I can start to measure how much value to put on that patent. And the truth be told, if we have a patent and we're going out to a broker to sell that, the thing we have to provide them is called evidence of use, EOU, where we want to show infringement and show how much money could be obtained if we did a license agreement. And that evidence of use is the metric that they use to figure out patent valuation. And the value of that patent would be on a risk-adjusted basis. We adjust all this for risk. What's the cost to enforce that patent? What's the likelihood that we're going to collect? What's the likelihood that we're going to win? What's the likelihood that we're, say we win, but can we actually collect money from those people, or are they going to disappear or change their business model or design around the patent, or, are they strong enough to survive the litigation? We want to kind of plan out the next 20 years of potential revenue, or whatever is left on the patent term. We want to look at all that and then crunch the numbers to say, okay, well, the patent has a valuation of maybe $5 million today because of, on a risk adjusted basis, you're likely to make that money back and be profitable. And because the risk is really high, you're probably going to make $50 to $100 million back. And so the value of the patent today on a risk adjusted basis is probably $5 million. Okay. And I'm just kind of throwing numbers out there, but the notion is, yes, maybe $100 million would be collected, but there's so many risks that go on to it that our patent valuation today, if we sold it, would be, quite low. If we owned the asset and we were, successfully able to execute on all those licenses, well, maybe the patent does turn into a $100 million asset. But it only does that after all those things happen. In my business of financing patents, though, I really need that inventor or the startup company to bring my invention, the invention that I had financed. I need them to bring it to market. And if they're unsuccessful in that, in any way, the patent that I financed is basically worthless. I'll be able to sell it for some nominal amount, $20,000, $50,000 or something. Basically, the cost of obtaining the patent. And somebody will pick it up and put it in their portfolio, and it'll just, be one of 1,000 patents in some gargantuan portfolio that may never see the light of day. So one of the things that I found really, really interesting is I saw a graph not too long ago that showed the number of marketing and sales people to the number of engineers for startup companies. And, if we assume that the number of engineers kind of represent the investment that a company makes in research and engineering, research and development, and the invention, the technical part of the invention, and we think about the number of people that a startup company has for sales and marketing, there's really, there's 2/3 of the company that are sales and marketing, and only 1/3 of the company is actually, quote, inventing. And, that ratio really drives home to me the thing that I've been telling inventors for a long time, which is the idea really isn't worth much. Okay? It's not worth much unless you have that marketing, that sales, that all the other parts that go along with a business. If you're really good at sales and marketing, the pet rock did pretty well back in its day. The sales and marketing are really what matter. Far, far, far more than the coolness of your invention. I'll tell you one story. I had an inventor call and tell me that he had a much better shipping container. He had an improvement on, the shipping containers that are on trucks and railroad, on railroad trains and those the big ships that go across the ocean. He wanted to change those out. He wanted a brand new one that would require new cranes, new ships, new trains, new truck trailers, like this entire ecosystem, the entire world economy runs on these shipping containers. And he wanted to swap them out because his was better for some reason. I don't know what his improvement was. But let's just say that his improvement saved 10% of the cost of these shipping containers or whatever. Even if he was right, even if that invention was so much better than the shipping containers that are used literally around the world, there is no way that he's ever going to get, the world's economy to switch over to his shipping container. No matter how great it was, it's just not going to happen. There's just too much headwind in that. There's too much switchover cost that they're never going to recoup. And yet that guy thought his patent had huge amounts of valuation. He was looking at it and saying, well, there's, 500 million shipping containers out there, and he was going to save $100 on each one. And look, this is a $50 billion invention. But the reality is it's just never going to make it there. So don't talk to me about valuation. When I do a lot of due diligence for angel groups across the country, and they want to know, how much value should I put on these patents? And I don't have a good answer for that. We look at the patents and we say, well, they seem to be pretty well written. They seem to be directed at something that's enforceable. And maybe they're going to be an asset at some point down the road. Right now they're worthless. Okay. Just flat out, they're worthless today. If they're right, if that patent is a good bet on how the market is going to, that the market is going to come to that technology, that the market's going to adopt that technology, well then, yes, that patent will have value in the future, and it'll be a great negotiating tool for, cross licensing with your competitors, do whatever, Typically, we will look at patents and say, they did a very poor job on the provisional. The claims in the non-provisional are really weak. There's a lot of patent profanity in it. These are just bad assets, and put no stock in them. That's the typical result of due diligence, because 95% of the patents are worthless, and there's not a very good chance that somebody is going to have a good asset, just statistically speaking. But, when we look at it, we also look at who the potential infringer would be. One of the things that we look at is the actor, and I'll give you an example for that. One of my friends here in town in Loveland has a company called Decibels, and they make a heat moldable earplug, earphone, if you will. And it comes with two little pieces of plastic that you put in boiling water, and they get really soft. And then you put them in your ear, and you just force them into the shape of your ear, and they really hold well. I mean, they're really cool. You get a good sound in there, and it has this little round piece, this cylinder in it, and you pop in an earphone, and now I got custom fitted earphones for like $60. It's way better than getting some custom, fitted $600 pair that musicians would wear, for example. And they're great for running, for athletics, because they just don't fall out. They're in there really well. Well, I looked at his very original patent, and the original patent said a method of taking these little plastic pieces and heating them up till they're soft. I don't think it said putting them in boiling water, but then so heating them up till they're soft, placing them in a user's ear and forcing them into the space, and then popping in the earbud. And I looked at him and I said, well, I didn't write this patent. And I said, well, who does this? Who is the person who infringes? Who's the actor of these claims? Who's the person that takes the thing out of the package and puts it in boiling water and then puts it in their ear? Well, it's the consumer. Can I sue the consumer? The infringement doesn't, because it's a method, the infringement never occurs until somebody does all the steps, right? Okay. So somebody buys a competitor's product from the store, they bring it home, and then all of a sudden they heat it up, they put it in their ear, and they pop the competitor's product in there. Now I have an infringement. Can I detect that infringement ever occurred? No. Can I tell who that person is? Well, no. I know that, somebody walked out of the store with that product, but can I tell that they actually took it out of the package? No, it still might be in the package. I don't know. And let's say we could detect it. Could I, do I send an infringement letter to somebody who wanted moldable earphones and say, you're a bad person, you infringe, and you owe me, on a $60 product, they're probably going to collect a nickel, a quarter, maybe 25 cents. Oh, you owe me a quarter because you infringed and you used the wrong guy's product. All that's ridiculous. Okay. If the actor is your customer, the patent's unenforceable, period. And if it's a lot of little customers, you never can do litigation against a huge number of people individually. So that just doesn't work. And so what I recommended that he do, and he finally did this, is create claims that are directed to another manufacturer. So what we want is an apparatus claim. We want heat moldable pieces that are about this size that get soft at this temperature and get hard at this temperature and have this little cylinder in it, and then an earphone that pops into that cylinder. Now I can go to the store and I can look at it and I can say, oh, here we go. Somebody infringed, because I can bring it home and say, oh, it has heat moldable things. It got soft at this temperature, warm at this temperature. I can go off the list, check, check, check. They infringe every piece of the claim. I can sue them. And there's somebody I want to sue. I want to sue competitors. I don't want to sue my customer. So only when the patents are correctly done will they have value, because only then will the actual infringement occur in a way that I can capture, a financial return, or at least measure what that return might be. So when we do, we get a lot of questions about how do we do loans against patents and how do we value patents. And I'll tell you that if I was to look at a lot of these patents and do a valuation today, the value would be a lot less than than the 2 to 5 million that we typically do loans for. And the reason is that the valuation for a loan is a little different context than, just a fire sale value of the patent. The value of a patent for a startup that has some revenue, we need that revenue to kind of help justify a valuation of the patent, but we need the revenue really to pay back the loan. And when we're evaluating a loan, we want to know, does that company have enough revenue or the capacity to generate revenue to pay back the loan? If they do, we're great. And we never actually figure out, or never have to figure out, if those patents have any value at all. We happen to hold them. Company pays back the note. We give them back. We're all square. But when we do this for a loan for a startup company, those patents may have value in other contexts. Okay. So let's say that we make a loan to a company and they're using their patent. The patents are held as collateral, but the company fails for some reason. Maybe there's a scenario where the current investors in the company might want to restart that company using that core technology. Well, if we know that, well, then the patents may have a lot more value than pure fire sale. If a company goes out of business and we're stuck holding the patents and we have to fire sale them and there's no known infringement, we're not going to get very much money for it. Maybe we need to sit on those patents for a while and hope that more infringement occurs, or we get evidence of use, or, I don't know if we're going to be able to sit on those patents for 5 years before that happens or not. Who knows? It's really a tough thing to come up with some kind of value for that patent in almost any context. And so if there's anybody who tells you what the value of the patent is, if they're telling you a value and they're writing a check for that value is real. If they're telling you a value and they're not writing a check for that, and they're just kind of speculating, oh, so and so, it might be worth this in a few, don't believe it. Okay. Well, I shouldn't say don't believe it, but know that there's a lot of uncertainty in that number. Okay. And you decide whether it's believable or not. The only believable number is one where somebody's given, has a big pile of cash to go along with it. That person, I believe their valuation. And you decide whether or not you want to make that sale or not, but that's up to you. Anyway, I look forward to your comments or questions or suggestions on this topic, and thanks for listening. Well, thanks for listening. I'm Russ Krajak, CEO of Blue Iron IP. We're a patent finance company where we'll make 50 to 100K investments in startup companies to get them decent patent portfolios. And then we'll do loans against patents at $2 to $5 million for later stage companies that have some revenue. You can find me at blueironip.com. You can pick up my book, Investing in Patents, available on Amazon. We're always looking for new deals to finance and syndication partners with angel or venture firms. And please feel free to get in touch with me. And I look forward to chatting with you.